If someone were to ask me what my number one favourite thing to do is, there'd only be one answer. I love to read. It hasn't always been this way though, and I actually didn't take to reading so easily. In fact, my mum told me a story of how when I was younger she used to have to stick words up around the house just to assist me with the process, because I was struggling at the time. My conscious love of reading didn't really blossom until a little bit later on, but in the early stages, someone else put in the legwork for me. That was this woman. That's my mum. My mum would read to me all the time when I was younger, as she read to all of us. Although, for context's sake, maybe we should go even a little bit further back, to this guy. This is Noel Hooker, aka my grandpa. When Mum was 5, she was diagnosed with a hip condition that meant she had to spend almost an entire year straight in the hospital, strapped into bed, with very restricted movement. It sounds like something out of a horror story, but that's what she had to go through. The visiting schedule at the hospital was cruelly restrictive, so my mum didn't really get to see her family as much as she would have liked to, or even as much as would have been fair. But a shining light of sorts was provided by my grandpa, who, every day after a long day at work, would march over to the hospital, briefcase in hand, armed with every and any children's book he could get his hands on, so that he could read it to her. There was something special about my grandpa. It's best explained by the old-fashioned saying, he had a twinkle in his eye. And this was something that shone through when he was reading to my mum. The tales that he read were heightened and enlivened by his charisma and charm. And as a result, he nurtured my mum's imagination until it ballooned, filling the ordinarily bleak world around her with waves and washes of colour. This had a huge impact on my mum. And now I guess we can return to my youth. My mum would read us stories too, but she wouldn't read them like most parents. She would animate them through her words and through her behaviour, ad-libbing each and every story into an interactive adventure. She told the story with so much enthusiasm that it would literally come alive in front of us. Subconsciously, for me, that's where it all began. Unfortunately, my interest wavered. I got older and too cool for stories. To quite cornily compare my interest in reading to a candle, it became a bit of a flickering flame for me. And by the age of about 15 or so, the flame had just completely gone out. If I gave you one guess as to who reignited my passion for reading, I reckon I can all but guarantee that you wouldn't guess the correct answer. It was this guy, Will Smith. Now, I know you're probably sitting there thinking, what? What the hell does the Fresh Prince have to do with reading? Well, to be honest, a lot. If only for me, anyway. When I was about 16, and just emerging from a very bad stage in my adolescence, I came across this.
The reason that reading is so important, there have been millions and billions and billions and gazillions of people that have lived before all of us. There's no new problem you could have with your parents, with school, with a bully, with anything. There's no problem you can have that someone hasn't already solved and wrote about it in a book.
I can't overstate the effect that this had on me at the time. I was doing okay, but not amazingly at college, and I had big, implausible dreams, with no real plan of getting to where I wanted to go. But now, thanks to Will Smith, I had a method. Books could show me the way. Initially, I read autobiographies. Then I graduated onto fiction and mostly theatre books because I was interested in acting at the time. I got to university, and all the way through, I felt like I had an advantage. I just couldn't understand why everyone wasn't utilising the fact that so many of the rules for success had already been written down. At points, I would walk the 45 minutes to university reading the entire time, stumbling my way there. I remember in particular when it got really cold and it was snowing, I had this dilemma because my hands were too cold to not wear gloves, but with gloves on, I couldn't turn the pages. So I'd walk, taking my glove off, turning the page, putting it back on, and so on and so forth. Eventually, my interest in theatre waned as well. But my interest in everything else absolutely rocketed. I'm not exactly sure when it began, but I found that I had this unquenchable thirst for knowledge of absolutely anything. I bought books on science, books on history, on language, psychology, philosophy, literally anything I could get my hands on. Now, I guess it might seem odd that I would read so many varying books, because you could probably ask the question, how is, say, microbiology going to contribute to my life in any way? I really think that everything in the universe is inherently connected. That there are strong underlying systems that spread the entirety of this world. That the things you learn in science, for example, connect to every other aspect of life. At some point in my life, the addition of these individual pieces of information will combine to serve me in a way that I could have never predicted. Since university, the books have just kept stacking up on top of each other. I've just read and read and read and read and read. I mostly read non-fiction currently, but it's not a slight on fiction in any way. I love to read novels, but I read novels as downtime, and I struggle to allow myself much downtime. Fiction can serve so many purposes though. It can be a salve for the soul that pains, provide an imaginary warmth on a cold night, and can even be the medium through which our own untapped emotions are released. One of my favourite things that I've ever heard said about reading is this, by the School of Life. Literature is ultimately the greatest time saver, because it gives us access to a range of emotions and events that it would take you years, decades, millennia to try to experience directly. Literature is the greatest reality simulator, a machine that puts you through infinitely more situations than you could ever directly witness. The lives I've lived vicariously this way have enriched my existence. And if you haven't begun your journey of reading yet, I cannot overstate what an amazing effect doing so can have on your life. For me, reading has been a lifeline, keeping me moving forward no matter how many problems life may throw my way. I hope it can serve as valuable a purpose to you.